I must actually acknowledge really the work that Netball New Zealand have been doing in this area. If you go into their website, you just see this raft of material that they've actually put in place to get their sport up and running, but also the openness about how they've been willing to share a lot of this information. And so, yeah, it's really something that's quite actually special to see that happening in such fast time. So today we've got from Netball New Zealand, Ruth Stanley. She's head of community netball. And welcome along, Ruth. It's great to have you on board. And I really do want to acknowledge that fantastic work that you and your team have done and getting that suite of material that covers from health and safety right through to playing guidelines, coaching guidelines, and even just in the work about risk assessments for people at work in your workplaces as well. So yeah, thank you very much for all that. It's going to be interesting just to talk through it as we go through today. So welcome along. We also have Fran Scully she's the CEO of Netball Central Zone here down in the Lower North Island. And Fran's going to give a little viewpoint around what they've been doing as well, and taking a lot of this material, I guess, and making it real and making it active for the centres that they manage and own, and the clubs then that are involved within those centres. So again, Fran, welcome to you, and it's great to have you on board. Just a few little protocols just before we do get into this. Like we've said, if everyone could just really switch their videos and microphones to mute, that would be fantastic. And you'll notice that in this, with the great thing with Teams is that there's a chat function, and we encourage you to use that throughout the conversation. And if you have questions that come up, please do just type them in there. We've got a team of people behind the scenes there that are working through looking at those, and at the end of the talk, we'll actually get our colleague Megan to come on and actually pose some of those questions. So go and do that. If you're having trouble actually using the chat function, which sometimes we've noticed some people have been, there's an email address called info@sportwellington.org.nz, and again, our team in the background there will be monitoring that. So yeah, so it's your session, as you know, there's a lot of things are happening as you're all trying to get your sports up and running. And so today, yeah, as I said, we've got a few questions. So we're going to do it through a couple of questions that we're going to pose first to Ruth, and then we'll bring Fran into this as well. So welcome, Ruth. It is great to have you here.
Hi, Matt.
And yeah, I guess really from a national perspective, I was wondering if you could just tell us about how Netball New Zealand has been working with the netball community to get community netball back up and playing. As we know, it's a big job and a big task, and yeah, I just wonder if you could give us a bit of an overview around that.
Thanks, Mark, and hi everyone. Good to be here at your meeting webinar today. It's great to be able to share some of the things we've been doing alongside lots of work that's also been going on in other sports, and really like to acknowledge the environment that we're all working in. You are the people that are on the ground trying to make sport happen. So it's been our role at Netball New Zealand to be leaders and being able to support our netball centres and netball communities as best as we can in this environment. And we've certainly all understand how much uncertainty there's been and how many questions there are unanswered. And I think most of us have had to really take lessons in developing our patience skills. So that's been a big one for everyone, I think, at the moment. So during these really uncertain times, and when there is a crisis, which certainly this pandemic has been, I think it's from Netball New Zealand's perspective, it's been really important for us to be able to connect and communicate with our members. So we set up 4 initiatives in the very early stages of COVID to make sure that we were hearing what our centres needed, being able to provide support and clarity around what those needs were, and also get buy-in and ideas from them on how we're best going to be able to move forward in the space. So the first thing we did was set up a community advisory group, which was made up of members from Netball New Zealand centres and zones, as well as a representative from secondary school sport and a representative from primary school sport. And that group was the group that took all the feedback in and made decisions on how we would move forward collaboratively as a system. The second part to that was we set up centre consultation groups. So broke our centres into 3 groups, small, medium and large, and met with them to understand what their immediate needs were and what support they needed through the different phases of the last 2 months. That information all fed into the advisory groups. And the third part, which was really important too, was our zone teams out in our 5 zones, connecting one-on-one with their individual centres as well. So that was sort of a 3-phased approach. And then making sure we streamlined the communication channels across all of those centres. We set up a weekly newsletter, which we don't normally do from a national perspective, but thought this was the time that we needed to make sure that clear information, got out to the right people at the right time consistently over the weeks. So we found that that was a really good approach, because especially when we were then moving forward from meeting the needs and trying to get the system capable to move on, when we moved to level 2 and got to decide what our 3 phases were, it then became a really collaborative approach of how, as a system, we're going to decide jointly how we're going to move through the phases, what those phases should be and the timings of that. And as everyone knows, if a group works on something, makes a decision together, the buy-in becomes a lot more positive, and also then everyone has a clear understanding of the reasons why you've chosen those phases and the timings around it. So we broke into 3 phases, which was get ready for netball. So that was the initial phase that we went into at the end of last week, and that was really the time when centres with staff could go back into their centres, but those centres who, smaller centres, was a time for their committees to be able to connect and start that planning phase, to be able to understand what all those COVID level guidelines really meant. That was the time that we released our COVID guidelines onto our website that you talked about before, Mark, and we thought it was really important that we provided a real sense of clarity around what was required in an environment that we have to acknowledge seems to change quite frequently. So we put guidelines up, and then a couple of days later, as you all know, those guidelines are amended. But we needed to know that we have to be able to plan for what the situation is at the moment with the best information we've got. And we all are learning great, not only patience, but flexibility skills, is that we need to be able to update that information as it comes in and update our planning around that as well. The second part of phase 2 was prepare to play. So that is really around how do our centres manage their facilities, how do their coaches manage teams getting back out and training and getting ready and prepared for the court. So also the centres deciding what sort of competitions they run, how they're going to implement all the COVID guidelines and the health and safety plans, and deciding what sort of competitions are going to best meet the needs of their communities. And then the third phase is return to play. So that's when the action is on, people back on the courts, and everyone is dying to be able to do that. But how centres can practically manage the health and safety of the players in the best way that they can. So that's really how we worked through deciding what those phases were and what they would look like.
Fantastic, Ruth. Yeah, in that, the communication obviously is key, as you've highlighted, and bringing people together so that they've all got that, I guess, shared purpose and shared understanding. Is there something that's really stood out to you through this process that you would say that would be a big piece of advice that you could give to other organisations that are going through this right now? And obviously everyone's at different stages. Yeah,
I think that was really beneficial, and of course you're not going to be able to connect with everyone, but what we found was really good, and I would encourage regional organisations as well as associations, talk to your clubs, get them to be part of your planning, understand what they need, because you're providing bottom line, providing a service to them, and the service or the offering that you provide is going to be much more meaningful, and they'll buy into it a lot more if they feel part of how that's developed. So really listening to what your members want is a very important part of this whole process, particularly in a time that's unusual, really.
Right. Yeah. No, it's great advice in that sense. You know, when you're sort of adapting your season, you know, we're all having to think like that now as we're going through this response, and as you've pointed out, that things are changing on us all the time. We don't know when we're going to be going into, say, COVID level 1 and the implication of that. So we might be in 2 for a while. If you're looking at adapting your season and games, you know, to meet the needs of the current alert levels and beyond. So how are you doing that from a Netball New Zealand perspective?
So we've developed a couple of resources for the return to play phase. I'll quickly tell you about the prepare to play resources as well, of how we have developed those and what the purpose of that is. So as we move to get ready to play, we've developed 2 resources. So a junior netball or Mother Earth Future Ferns prepare to play resource that helps support what coaches can do to get their teams ready, using some of our existing resources and pulling out things from there that allow that to the maintenance of that social distancing. So we know there'll be a lot of lack of confidence out there, a lot of feeling about particularly parents not wanting their kids to just be back into normal activities. So chose some of those activities to help coaches, and then also a Netball Smart Prepare to Play resource, which is for coaches to also have those activities that promote social distancing, but also are getting our players ready to get back on the court. So when we are returning to the return or going into the return to play phase, we thought it was really important to be able to support our centres with some ideas around what could that competition look like. So we've developed a resource which is going up on our website at the beginning of next week, that looks around at the different types of delivery models. So how might you break up the 10 or 15 weeks that we've got into a 6 and 8, a 10-week competition? How might you run that? As it could be just rock up and play on the day and you get put into teams. It could be a more formalised structure. So we're giving some opportunities and ideas to centres around what those things could look like, and then also what type of different competition formats they might look at. So in that resource, we've got different ideas around fast 5 netball, walking netball, 6v6, switch up. So there's a whole lot of different ideas, beach netball, around what sort of things communities might want during these times.
Fantastic, Ruth. You know, the whole flexibility approach, I guess, is key, isn't it? As we're looking at this in these unusual circumstances. And I think most of us probably noticed in the time that we've been forced to stay in our bubbles, that we've really had to slow down and reflect on life a little bit and what we have been doing. And yes, how have you been finding then you know, when we've been putting these resources out there, and you know, like some of it's just new, obviously, and it's coming out there now. Has there been much feedback from say the centres and the associations that you're dealing with around this raft of ideas that you're putting out there? How are they seeing that?
There's been some positive feedback because it's just giving people something to get hold of and do, because there's so much information out there. I think at the moment, any way we can make things easier for people and give them more clarity, they're grasping hold of that, because there's so much information coming in. I think that any organisation at any level who can give their members some clarity and make it easy for them to participate and be involved is really positive.
Great, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, when we look at that need there to just get the game out there again, isn't it, to get people active, and I think in helping people just again socially connect and use those values of what many of us would talk about in sport. Just so that people can actually be together again and feel part of something again after we've been in this phase. But Yeah, I was wondering again if you could just go into a little bit more around, the competition side of things. Your thinking behind the flexibility that you're doing in the different types of competitions, is it tied to any sort of principles that you're really looking at and wanting to get across at the moment?
One of the principles that's always been around in sport, but we're really trying to focus on at the moment, is being really player or participant centred, and actually meeting the needs of what people want and what they see as being great quality participation opportunities that are safe and most important, fun and enjoyable for them, because that's what's going to bring them back to playing the game. And I know there's been a lot of thinking around in netball about how we deliver moving forward, and that thinking started even before COVID came into place around, we have got a great product and we don't want to throw the product out, but there's different ways that we can deliver to different segments of our netball market. So, for example, we've done a lot of work in the junior space about modifying that format of the game so it does better meet the needs of the kids, so they have a way better experience and it's more fun. Looking at that youth space around what do youth actually want and how do we listen to their voice, and that goes back to that whole communication piece again, around how do we listen to our youth and actually really listen to them and then really take action as to what we're providing them as opportunities to participate. So, yeah, it's definitely that we want to make sure that, and a lot of you will have heard about the balance is better principles around really being participant-centred and doing what's best for our young people so that everyone gets a fair opportunity to develop, learn, grow and be part of sport and physical activity.
That's fantastic. Ruth, for that. And it is key, isn't it, that we are listening, and I think that's what this whole situation, I guess, is an opportunity for us all to reflect on what we have been doing in the past. There's some great things that do happen in the past. There's a great opportunity going forward that we are actually providing those sorts of opportunities that people are really looking for out there now. And again, you brought up the balance is better for principles that I think many of us are across. And it's really just an adaptation to going forward. And I think that's the interesting part, really, just the phased approach. I just wouldn't mind touching on that just a little bit again about how you are taking your time to make sure that people are ready before they actually really just go out and do it. Is that something that's been a deliberate ploy from Netball New Zealand to make sure that things are in place and some of these principles are able to be understood before we're getting out there to play?
Definitely, and you will have seen a lot of communication from Sport New Zealand and media around, and discussions that we've had with other larger sports code, is it is really important that we get this right. It is really important that everyone understands what the requirements are and feel confident that they can implement these. And also making sure that our first responsibility is to ensure that we provide a safe environment for our people to participate in. So when we discussed all of this with our consultation in our meeting groups, it was really positive to see that the centres, who are our main deliverers, were really keen to make sure that they got this right and didn't want to rush into it. And sure, I've had phone calls and emails, why can't we start playing tomorrow? And which is great, because it means people are really enthusiastic about getting back onto the netball court. But the centres were really all in agreement that we wanted to, for the sake of 1 or 2 weeks, when really I don't think many of us thought that we would get back into being able to participate and train as early as we have. So it means that we have still got a reasonable length season if we think of, potentially starting on the 19th of June, which some centres may not, because they may choose to stagger their start or have different grades starting at different times. But it does mean that there's going to be quite a reasonable length of season, between 10 and 14, 15 weeks. So it is giving the opportunity for centres to just sort of make sure they move into this and have all their ducks in a line, but also getting our players prepared so that we don't rush back into it after, for some people, 2 months of inactivity and then poor old ACC have stats go rising up, and we don't want that in netball because we've actually done such a great job over the last 3 years of keeping those stats going down with all the great work that teams and individuals have been doing in the Netball Smart space. So
yeah, I think you're exactly right there, and we could advocate for the great work that we're seeing in Central Zone around that as well. It's fantastic, just how the well-being of players is actually way to the fore now. And the point you make is a really good point around, let's make sure that people are ready to actually get back onto the courts and be really active within these competitions that we are putting out there to them. So yeah, again, I think the wealth of material that you guys have put together is just amazingly good, and I encourage anyone on this call, if you haven't gone onto the Netball New Zealand website to go and have a look, because there's some great stuff and great ideas on there. So yeah, so thank you, Ruth. It's a good little segue to bring Fran into the conversation now, to sort of see, well, how we've got some of the resources and how Netball's Central Zone have been going through it. So welcome, Fran. It's great to have you on board.
Kia ora, how are you going?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yeah, so I just really interested if you could tell us a little bit about it from the perspective of Netball Central, about how you've been going about engaging netball with the community here in the Wellington region first, from a bigger picture, I guess, point of view, and implementing some of the really cool things that are happening.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks, Ruth, for giving the Netball New Zealand perspective of what's been happening. And I guess Ruth advised that before we set up one-on-one calls with our centres to really understand the impacts. And I guess with most sports, we needed to understand first and foremost what the financial impact was and how we could help with guidance, applications or questions. And I guess what came out of that is all of our 13 centres within Netball Central Zone are all in different situations, and they continue to do that. So I guess the first couple of weeks within the lockdown was spent extensively working with Netball New Zealand around developing ways to still connect through that national strategy. I think we had every single household basically that all of a sudden was locked up in their houses, and we had lots and lots of ways in which to engage via fitness, and Netball has Netball Netfit, that came out. So what we wanted to do was provide content to all of our 13 netball centres around the national strategy. So that was our Future Ferns programs, our coaching, our umpiring and Netball Smart, and how we could continue to engage with our local communities. So what we did is we set up a weekly schedule, and I mean, we're really, really fortunate here at Netball Central Zone to have Irene Van Dyke, and she leads our junior program. So what she was doing just from home was creating netball specific skills for our year 1 to 8. And you didn't have to have a netball, you could have a sock she used on a couple of times, and she used some toilet paper to add a bit of fun and humour into it. And we just posted those little skill sessions so that mum, dad, auntie or uncle could really get in that afternoon break time and just let them do some skill sessions. So yeah, that was I think that was the key, really, was trying to engage with our communities with online content that actually had a purpose. It wasn't just putting content out there for the sake of it. And so our centres really took up the opportunity to reshare our Future Ferns and our umpiring and our coaching space, but they also took the initiative and ran some of their own trick shots and umpiring pieces just to showcase a little bit more of a really, really local focus. And I guess that's what Ruth touched on before. We're always trying to understand each centre and their needs and providing that opportunity to them.
Yeah, it is an important point, and isn't it, from the regional perspective, is how we actually do get and engage with the actual participants now. And it was interesting you touched on your officials as well and coaches. Looking at that, could you give just a couple of examples, really, maybe, Fran, around, how have you done it with coaches? Because this is one of the key things. They're the people who are actually going to be out there now trying to bring people back into the game and get it going again. So yeah, what's some of the things that you've found that work for you guys in that area?
Yeah, so we've ran alongside Netball New Zealand. It's called the Coaches Korero, and it's an online Q&A session that's directly related with our ANZ Premiership coaches. And we're also going to be running informal workshops in around what does a shortened season look like? And that brings us back into Netball Smart and the ways of which Ruth advised before, people haven't been training for the last 4 weeks. We don't want them to get injured. We want them to slowly return to netball. We want it to be a fun environment. So what we've done is we've done online forums and coach developer training. In the umpire space specifically, we've had Anne Hay. She's also an ANZ Premiership umpire, and we're really lucky that she works with us here in all of our centres. What she did was she took the opportunity to train, I think it's between 70 and 80 new coach assessors that work within our umpire space at each of the centres to be able to see the needs and the gaps that are happening with our umpires and work with one-on-one plans with those players. So it's, sorry, those umpires. So it's really, really good. And then she took it a little step further and actually decided to have a supper with the squaddies. And that was our national squad and our watch list umpires. And what they did is they just created a little private but informal workshop with our centres where they could just have a bicky and a cup of tea and talk about what the pathway's like for the umpires. They had open and honest conversations around what the balance looked like and just tried to connect deeper to those that are on the pathway and wanting to look at how they can potentially as well become an ANZ Premiership umpire and actually go further.
It's great, isn't it? Really, what I guess, you know, if we look at the positives of what COVID's really offered us, is exactly what you just talked about there, as a chance to really connect with people who are within your sport doing amazing jobs that are crucial, and actually hearing their viewpoints. And have you found that to be something that's just been really standing out to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and our centres have done an amazing job as well. They've been constantly in contact with their members, understanding their communities first and foremost, so that they can then adapt what the season looks like. So we've got some centres that have got some modified seasons. So normally we would play an hour game, and they are going to possibly reduce that to a 40-minute game. What that does is they've also looked at whether that means they just restrict team numbers to 10. So that means that everyone gets a go on the court. So it's been really, really good to see that they've not just made a decision. What's been happening with Netball New Zealand, the zones and the centres, is that collaboration and understanding, and Ruth touched on it before, is that everyone has to go on that journey. So it's not them making a decision and that then impacts and it doesn't work. It's actually looking at it and going, actually, do we start any of our school netball in term 3 rather than starting it just before the term 2 holidays? So it's just a really good alignment within the system.
Yeah, no, and you're raising a good point here, isn't it? And that again, the adaptability of what you're having to do because the season has been impacted. But again, it's about getting on with it and really making it work for the participant. I was wondering if you could go into a little bit around maybe some of the games that some of the centres are coming up with, about how they're looking at possibly changing rules and changing the way the game may be actually played on traditionally, if it's on a Saturday, to actually meet all these guidelines that are in place at the moment.
Yeah, so there's a few things. I think affordability and anxiety are going to be the two pieces that have the potential to stop people playing sport. So the anxiety piece is a piece that what centres are doing is they're allowing players to join a team. It might be halfway through the season, it might be after a couple of weeks. Because what we might find is we might have some parents, especially with our junior kids as well, so we're not just talking about the senior competitions, is they might just take a step back and have a look and go, oh, I'm not quite sure yet. And once they see it in action, once they get used to, because it is going to be a new environment, if we still have to have the restrictions of hygiene and all of those pieces in place, once it becomes a habit, they'll then get used to it and then they'll join. So our centres are allowing people and participants to join halfway through a season. There might be a little rule in there that they might have to play 1 or 2 games before the finals, but that still gives them a window of at least 6 to 8 weeks where they can potentially join and play. Another one is Netball Wellington Centre is actually going to not have the impacts of this, the rankings this year impact next year. So it's just allowing people to play. So whatever the outcome is of the competition this year, they're actually going to use 2019 as the ranking system to go into 2021. So it's just a really good way of making sure that people, there's still that competitiveness of playing against each other every week, but it's not putting this focus on just a 12-week competition, which would normally be 16 weeks or potentially longer with some grading. So adapting the playing rules like that, and also about potentially if people are sick, how do they play up or play down within grade. So it's really, really good to see our centres engaging and looking at their own rules and going, actually, that might inhibit someone from playing. So how can we adapt that so that that doesn't inhibit them moving forward? And another really good one is Hawke's Bay's actually gone with Sports Ground. So that's a game day app. So it's a contactless scorecard. So it addresses any issues. So you've just got your phone, and you know the people on both oppositions have it, so that if there's any discrepancies, you've got sort of a piece in play there. But it's addressing any potential high touch points with netball predominantly using a scorecard and a pencil to write on, and you hand those scorecards in at the end. So it's a really, really good way that they've been able to utilise technology as well and move that sort of forward in that space.
Yeah, it's again the whole opportunity again, isn't it, of bringing technology more forward now and making changes and efficiencies, I guess, into how maybe netball has been done, things have been done in the past, and some great stuff that can come from this. Yeah. One of the other areas that I was just interested to touch on with you is around, and we're talking more community sport here, is that representative programs. What's been the stance from Central Zone on that now going for this season?
Yeah, well, Netball New Zealand, in consultation with the zones and centres, have decided that all representative programs have been cancelled. And instead, what centres and the zones and Netball New Zealand will be talking about is whether we do festival days instead. That's predominantly what we have done in the past for that space. But also, that what that does is it means that they can come dressed in a theme, or they can go back knowing that, you know, because if we think about it, with the kids that have gone back to school, and I'm a mum, and I'm sure there's parents on this webinar as well, that the kids love going back to school to interact with friends, and it's a possibility highlighting that maybe the parents are holding that anxiety. So if we can provide a fun opportunity where our kids can play and still engage, and yes, they have a little bit more of a skill challenge that's a little bit different to just playing on the weekend, then it allows them still that different opportunity than playing on the weekend, and it means that they can engage and just play with their friends, basically.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, isn't it? When we're looking at, I guess what you've noticed over the last couple of weeks as you've been doing your planning and trying to get the tournaments and competitions, more of the competitions actually, up and running again. What would be some of your tips, Fran, that you would offer to other sports in helping getting this up and going?
Yeah, I think the key learnings that the centres have advised me on their one-on-ones is just talking to their members. If you haven't talked to your members, don't assume that what they want to play is still what they want to do. A lot of our netball centres actually, once they surveyed, they found that people were okay with a shortened season, and they didn't need it to go into the summer codes or anything like that. They're quite happy and content with just getting out and playing again. And I think it's that connectiveness, right? Everyone wants to belong or connect with a whole lot of other people, and so if they've got that environment to be able to do that. So I guess that would be my one key thing that I've learned from all of our 13 netball centres, is that actually make sure that you understand your members and what they are wanting in terms of the game to be played, and just don't assume. Right.
One of the big areas that we're all having to deal with too is the whole health and safety aspect going forward. What are some of again, your advice that you would have on that? You know, the big one for us that we're all having to sort of deal with is contact tracing or contact registration. But again, meeting those health and safety and hygiene requirements, is what advice would you have out there as again for sport in doing this?
Yeah, don't try to recreate the wheel, I guess. There's a lot of apps out there. Check with your, if you're in a facility, check with the facility what they're doing first and foremost. And then also if you're on sports grounds, etc., that are run through the council, check what your local councils are actually doing as well, so that you're not having to do double ups or anything like that. Also, the councils have been really, really proactive around, if you're going with the apps that they already have, they'll help with signage of the venues and areas. So definitely look into that. And in terms of the hygiene, I guess the key thing is that don't think you have to take on all the responsibility. I think the Prime Minister's done a great message in saying that it's taken 5 million people to get here, and it's going to take the same for sport to get back up on its feet. So if that means that our clubs and our participants might need to take some hand sanitizer with them to play sport, then so be it. But don't think that as the sporting organisation that you now need to have a pallet of hand sanitizer coming in or anything like that. So just actually put a little bit of the responsibility on the members, and also understand that if you're just relaying the same message that what the Prime Minister is doing, then we're actually all in this together and we'll be able to play the sport at the end of the day.
Yeah, great advice. That's spot on in many ways, is that we are all in this together, and the more that we do work together, we're going to be getting things out there in a real fun and enjoyable and practical way, really, in that sense. Yeah. I'd just like to touch on volunteers. As you know, volunteers are massive in all of in sport, and in the delivery of sport and the planning and the management of sport. What are some of the things that you've been doing in that area, Fran, about engaging your volunteers into through this period and looking to go forward?
Yeah, well, we take coaches and umpires are volunteers to some degree. So we've been working alongside them to see what does it look like in their environment, what are the challenges that they're going to be facing when it comes to us returning back to playing netball. So trying to provide our coaches some resourcing and around what a shortened season looks like, and doing that via informals. We provide the opportunity for them to engage. Look, and some people might not want to, and that's okay. Some people are quite okay with just going back and they just want to have fun, and that's fine. And we have other people that want to actually engage and understand it a little bit better and do those sorts of things. So we're making sure that we're understanding what the requirements are of them, or the impacts, and what that looks like. And I know each of our netball centres as well are having those conversations with their umpire bases at their centres. So what they're doing is they're having meetings to, again, what does it look like if we possibly change the day, or if we change a time, does that impact on them? Because we know that there's been impacts for our families out there and around working and financial. So it might look a little bit different, but I know that we're all adapting to meet the needs of what our participants, not just those playing, but also our coaches, our umpires, our bench officials, everyone involved in the game, to make sure that they all feel that they're part of it and been part of the change too.
Yeah, it's that whole area, isn't it, of just scenario planning is probably the key one, isn't it, with them, and not having surprises for people like ourselves who volunteer a lot within sport on a day-to-day and weekly basis. But no, that's fantastic. Hey, can't let you go without asking a little bit about the Pulse. How are they tracking right now?
Yeah, the Pulse have just started back training. So they are still in what we would probably call a level 3, level 4 environment. It's a really, really controlled environment. A little snapshot into their trainings now. They have to temperature check every morning at 7:30. They then do a health online questionnaire. If they have anything from a runny nose, then they're not allowed in the training environment. And we've inducted them into what that environment looks like. And they're practicing at the moment social distancing. So they have a little area of ASB Sports Centre, and we've got 2 courts out there that we've got our own little area, and it's all roped off with. And they've got seating, it's got their name and label on it. They make sure that they're within sort of the 1 to 2 metres when they're doing ball drills. So it's a very, very different and challenging environment for them, because they are they've all said, oh, we just want to hug each other, we've missed each other, etc. And you get that, right? And we will have that at our clubs and our school levels as well. I know a couple of teachers that have said to me, oh gosh, it's so hard to, the kids just ran up to each other and said, oh, I missed you, to their friends. And it's just trying to understand what that sort of looks like. But yeah, the competition's going to be interesting. It's a 10-week condensed competition. It's going to be really, really tough on our athletes. But we're going to be announcing this afternoon actually what that schedule looks like, so everyone will be able to see when the Pulse are set to play.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Fran, and for the insights as to what you've been doing from Central Zone's perspective, working into the centres. And obviously the centres are doing some great work going into their clubs as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Ruth, we'll just keep you both on the line now, and I'll bring in my colleague Megan, see if there's been some questions. So Megan, is there some questions that have been posed out there?
Hi Mark, thanks. We've just had one come through that's asked how netball have been working with other sporting codes during these times.
Yeah, so maybe Ruth, if we put that to you, that would be great. Yeah.
So through Sport New Zealand, through the community sport managers, we meet weekly around all the issues and areas that have arisen from COVID. So we do quite a lot of discussion and planning work together around what does that look like for different sports, share best practice, and a lot of the work that was done around the different phases of the levels is also discussed at those meetings across all the NSOs. So there has been really good communication and alignment there, and sharing of resources, because we're all facing the same challenges. We're all looking at common issues, common threats to the systems. So it's been really good to be able to have that communication and share best practice. And Fran, I know similar things have been happening for you, haven't they, at regional level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sport Wellington's done a fabulous job in bringing all the codes together to talk about general issues that we're facing. We've got a regional response group that's set up that includes all the DHBs and the councils and sporting codes. And then it's just great to see that there's subgroups of that around contact tracing, and it's really been an opportunity for all sports to come together and look at things a little bit differently and understand what do we need to all do or all give up a little bit of something in order for our participants to actually play each of our codes, because we can't look at it from a selfish lens. We need to look at it and of a longevity of what does this look like for all sports. And actually at the end of the day, we want people out participating and playing, because we all know what the benefits are of those people out playing the games.
And that's a great final point there too, Fran, is exactly about that, is it's about getting people out and active, and the benefits from being active is what we all sort of can see and believe in. So is there anything else there, Megan? Sorry, I think you said that was the only one.
No, I think that's the only question we had come through. You did too good a job leading the
that was lucky, Fran, wasn't it?
Virtual high five, Ruth.
No, it was great. Hey, we do thank you both so much for sharing your insights. As I said at the beginning, I think Netball's done an amazing job in what you have done and been able to get an extensive sort of resources out there and getting information out to your members and starting to actually get your sport up and running. So thank you very much for sharing your time with us. I know that both of you are very busy in the roles that you've got. And to all of you who are online actually listening in, I think some of the key points in here is that please do be planned, do be organised. There's not a big rush to get in, to go out and play. I think the welfare of our participants needs to always be front of mind into what we're doing, so that we are really meeting their needs and enjoy what we're doing really through this time. I think what we're hearing a lot is that the COVID has presented us with an opportunity to reflect and adapt and change things. And maybe one of the neat challenges that we've all got is when we are applying some of these adaptations to our games, that maybe they're things that we could think of in the future, so that they actually become the real normal for what we're really trying to do with sport as well. So So again, thank you, Ruth, and thank you, Fran, and to everyone out there, have a great weekend. Enjoy that extra freedom that we do have in level 2. Make sure you do connect with your family and friends, and obviously get out there and enjoy some of the activity that you can do. So thanks again, everybody. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you.
See everyone.